Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's Wildcard Wednesday on maintaining owner access to vehicle data. So glad you could join us today. My name is Sue Miller, and I'm a Senior Fleet Account Manager here at Geotab and your host for today's expert session. So before we get started, hopefully you can see a quick poll that I just launched that has just one question. Would you support a law giving vehicle owners the ability to choose who has access to their vehicle data? Would greatly appreciate your participation, and I will hopefully be able to share the results with you in just a moment. We got 89% yes and 11% no. Thank you for doing that, and as we get further into Stephen's presentation, you'll see why we did this, as it unfolds. So presenting on today's topic is Stephen Woodring, our Government Affairs Manager at Geotab. So without further delay, Stephen, please start us off.
Thank you, Susan. Hi, everybody. Thank you for your time this morning. My name is Stephen Woodring, Government Affairs Manager at Geotab. I'm based in Washington, D.C., and today I'm going to provide a government affairs update on policy issues important to us, as well as ones that we think are important to you. So for today's agenda, I'm going to provide a quick high-level overview of the tone being set at the top from the Biden administration and the 117th Congress. We're going to visit the infrastructure package and get a quick status update about where that currently stands. Then we're going to talk about the emphasis on electric vehicles and and some of the themes regarding environmental legislation. From there, we're going to talk about right to repair. I'm going to provide an update on where things currently stand with that movement. And part of the right to repair movement is starting to include vehicle data access. And so we're going to inform you about that relationship as well as vehicle data access wins themselves. And we can't talk about vehicle data access without following cybersecurity and privacy. And then lastly, we'll talk about trade and compliance and things you can do today. So with that, we'll jump right in. So the Biden administration and the 117th Congress. So despite the partisanship displayed by Congress, spending is only increasing. The current trend of big government is only going to continue as the country continues to navigate out of the pandemic and its economic aftermath. And all of this while the country competes for the global technological advantageous position. And then regarding the 117th Congress, the margins are tight. In the House of Representatives, Democrats have a 10 seat margin over Republicans. And then in the Senate, it's a 50-50 split with Vice President Harris being the tiebreaker. And with elections always being right around the corner in Congress, the window to get things done isn't as large as the 4-year window that the administration has to operate. And so we'll talk a little bit about that window here with the infrastructure package. So the July 4th deadline was self-imposed by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and it seems that could be slipping. We're seeing conversations between the White House and Senate Republicans take place. I know there's a meeting today to hopefully bridge the gap. As the White House originally offered a $2.25 trillion infrastructure package, for which the Senate Republicans responded with something a quarter of the size. But as conversations have continued, it seems that they're getting closer to the $1 trillion mark. And for the first time, Senate Republicans are including funding for electric vehicle infrastructure, as well as resilience work. And then as those conversations take place, and if they do falter, we do have the Senate Environmental and Public Affairs Committee who have passed their surface transportation bill, which would be about $311 billion over the next 5 years, or about 34% over the current FAST Act. And that's the surface transportation authorization that expires at the end of September. Regarding a heavy truck, we're seeing some themes emerge out of regarding this industry. And so a couple of those regulations that we're seeing in regards hours of service. So hours of service was part of last year's infrastructure bill, which contained language requiring FMCSA to reevaluate the research on proposed changes to the hours of service rules, giving drivers more flexibility on rest breaks. However, it is not clear if that language would be included in any of this year's legislation. Furthermore, FMCSA has proposed a pilot program for the so-called split sleeper berth rule. This would affect team drivers in which one driver is driving the truck and the other driver is in the sleeper berth. So as these conversations continue, Geotab is monitoring them. And if you do have any questions about some of these regulations, we do have Kyle Dotsworth as our ELD specialist, and he would be happy to answer any of the questions you may have, especially as we move towards the Canadian implementation of ELD. Then we have truck parking. So the Senate bill that I mentioned from the Environmental and Public Works Committee currently does not contain any funding regarding truck parking. However, House Transportation and Infrastructure Chairman Peter DeFazio promises to include truck parking funding in the House version. What we're hearing from the truck stop operators, they're actually opposing any public truck funding, arguing that the private sector can provide adequate parking themselves. Also regarding the infrastructure package, so the Highway Trust Fund, there's a lot of conversations about how to keep this funded, and vehicle miles traveled tax is one of those. So Transportation Secretary Buttigieg has mentioned user fees as a possible source for infrastructure funding, and he's very open to a potential national vehicle miles traveled tax as a source for funding the Highway Trust Fund. And he's not alone. Ranking member of the House Transportation Infrastructure Committee, Sam Graves, has proposed using the U.S. Postal Service fleet to test out a vehicle miles traveled fee. And furthermore, recently, Texas Senator John Cornyn of the Senate Finance Committee has suggested using a truck-only vehicle miles traveled tax as well. And his suggested method would levy a tax of 25 cents for every mile driven. And the mileage would be tracked via government-mandated devices that report the data back to the IRS. And furthermore, regarding vehicle miles traveled, within that Senate Environmental and Public Works legislation, one provision does have a pilot program to establish a pilot program for a national motor vehicle per mile user fee. And so they would seek volunteers from all 50 states, and this would not only be for heavy trucks, but it would also include light trucks, passenger vehicles, and medium duty vehicle trucks as well. Shifting a bit to the state level, so California in 2019 passed Senate Bill 210, is the Heavy Truck Inspection and Maintenance Program. And so this would be a comprehensive pilot program to ensure all emissions control standards are adequately maintained throughout the vehicle's operating life. So CARB envisions this program where heavy truck vehicle fleets can demonstrate periodic OBD compliance through their existing telematics service providers. And the entire submission process would take place automatically through the telematics vendor with no driver intervention or vehicle downtime. This is something we're monitoring. We've looked at the spec and continue to work with CARB to ensure that this would not be a burden to the industry, and see where they're going with this. So if you have any questions about this program, please feel free to reach out to us as we participate in their stakeholder engagement meetings. And lastly, the implementation of this pilot program would not be until 2023. Moving on to the ATA, American Trucking Association's Technical Maintenance Council, RP 1226 Task Force regarding messaging standardization. So this task force is developing a recommended practice that defines messages and standards for the RP 1226 connector. And this covers telematics and onboard diagnostic accessory connectors. And so this is a forum which Geotab participates, as well as with many other TSPs, fleets as well. And this initiative is being led by OEMs. And so we would just encourage you to participate, as this may impact the quality and quantity of data you have the ability to access. So this is just one of the forums that we participate in, and we highly encourage other folks to join as it relates to their vehicle data. Moving on to electric vehicles, this has been a major point of emphasis for the Biden administration. In January, after taking office, President Biden issued executive order on tackling the climate crisis at home and abroad. And included in that was Section 205, Federal Clean Electricity and Vehicle Procurement Strategy. And this would direct the administration to leverage the federal government's footprint and buying power to lead by example, to procure carbon pollution-free electricity and clean zero-emission vehicles. So this would be consistent with President Biden's Build Back Better Jobs and Economic Recovery Plan, of which his Clean Energy Jobs Plan is central pillar to that. And that jobs plan, the American Jobs Plan, focuses on upgrading and repairing America's physical infrastructure, investing in manufacturing, research and development, as well as building a national network of 500,000 EV chargers by 2030. And all this would promote labor, training, and installation standards. Lastly, on this slide, a potential resource for you and your teams. So back in April, the U.S. Department of Transportation Federal Highway Administration released a document of policies and funding available to electric vehicle chargers along the national highway system. So if you click that link of policies and funding, it will take you to the document, which lists out all these grants and funding opportunities for supporting the electrical vehicle charger build-out. Moving on to the environment. So environmental legislation, programs and funding are really making headway this Congress. Even the Senate Finance Committee marked up their first comprehensive climate legislation called the Clean Energy for America Act. That proposal would simplify clean energy tax credits into three categories: credits to encourage clean electricity production, clean transportation, and energy efficiency. Other themes that we are seeing that could possibly utilize vehicle and transportation data include climate resiliency. So they're looking at transportation infrastructure and how it could potentially withhold and stand against a significant climate event. And so we're seeing resiliency efforts and initiatives really being included into planning operations. And then moving on to greening real estate. So we're seeing planning grants and tax credits. And these are geared towards how to make existing real estate and structures and buildings more energy efficient and greener. So whether that's simply adding EV chargers or changing the way the handling of water rainfall, this is picking up as well. And then pre-disaster mitigation. So with climate change, significant weather events taking place, and if that's the case, the moving of populations is going to be extremely important during those events. And so we're seeing disaster relief mobilization studies, as well as grants for resiliency and evacuation routes. And certainly smart cities, clean, safe roads, funding and emphasis on that is growing and is very much a part of a lot of the legislation that is being proposed. Moving on to right to repair. So right to repair is the desire to fix complex equipment untethered from the original manufacturer. And this includes everything from tractors to laptops to washing machines to motor vehicles. And this movement got its first big spark in Massachusetts, where a law was passed in 2012 that mandated that car manufacturers make vehicle diagnostic and repair information available to consumers. And recently, in 2020, in this last election period, the Massachusetts voters went a step further approving a ballot initiative to update the law to disclose electronic vehicle data. And so this would require manufacturers that sell motor vehicles equipped with telematics systems to install a standardized open data platform beginning with model year 2022. The opposition to this right to repair initiative in Massachusetts said that the ballot question would create easy opportunities for strangers, hackers, and criminals to access consumer vehicles and personal driving data, including real-time location, and that would put people at risk without doing anything to improve the consumer experience. And once it passed 75%, 25% on election day, shortly thereafter, the Alliance for Automotive Innovation filed a lawsuit in the U.S. District Court for the District of Massachusetts. And the lawsuit argues that the 2020 law is unenforceable because it conflicts with federal law and the Constitution and makes personal driving data available to third parties with no safeguards to protect core vehicle functions and consumers' private information or physical safety. And so that trial actually starts June 14th and should run throughout that whole week. And sometime after that, a decision will be made. Aside from that, there's a lot of activity taking place at the federal level. Recently, the Federal Trade Commission issued a new report to Congress entitled Nixing the Fix, an FTC report to Congress on repair restrictions. So this report identified numerous types of repair restrictions, such as using adhesives that make parts difficult to replace, limiting the availability of spare parts, and making diagnostic software unavailable. And so this, the report explores means of expanding consumers' repair options and how the Commission can assist in that expansion, consistent with its statutory authority. And furthermore, the report states that manufacturers have offered numerous explanations for their repair restrictions, but the agency, the FTC, has found that a majority of those are not supported by the record. Furthermore, the report defines telematics as information on the operation and status of a vehicle that is collected by a system contained in the vehicle and wirelessly relayed to a central location, often the manufacturer or dealer of the vehicle. So telematics is being defined by the FTC. It is seen as one of the 8 categories of repair restriction, as it steers consumers to the manufacturer's repair networks. So tethering the consumer to the OEM is how telematics is perceived to in the consumer space. So vehicle data access and how does telematics fit into that? Well, the current issue with vehicle data is that there are currently no laws in place regarding access and control. And it's easy to see why ownership is simply being assumed in this regulatory vacuum. So the risk is simple. A commercial operator may wake up one day and discover that access to their vehicle and business operations data is severely limited. And at that point, there may be very little that can be done. So if you're already leveraging vehicle data, will you be able to do so in the future? And if so, or if not, what needs to be done in order to protect that right? So what is vehicle data? Well, vehicle data is any data generated by the operation of the vehicle. This is also known as telematics data. And access to vehicle data is essential for business operations and innovation. And so with all the data that the vehicle processes and generates, the more the vehicle acts as that platform, the more it enables vehicle owners and operators to collect and share that data. The owners also benefit from having the freedom to choose where to go, for lower repair costs and the access to make more personalized services. So why vehicle data access? At Geotab, we believe in open standards to facilitate interoperability and the data exchange among different products and services. and that's intended for widespread adoption. We see fleet operations not being seen as a cost to doing business, but rather as a profit driver. And so we believe in a data access model that gives vehicle owners control of their vehicle-generated data and the right to choose which third parties to share their data with. And currently, the prevailing model ensures fair competition. It protects personal privacy. It advances data security and enables the appropriate use of data analytics driven by public interest. Sue mentioned the poll earlier, and the results from that, I believe, were about 89 to 11. And so this question was proposed to about 1,100 folks, U.S. adults who own or lease a car, newer than year 2000, over a week in just this last March. And there's a survey done by the Car Coalition on vehicle data access and repair and maintenance costs. And the results that they came back with, if you would be willing to ask your member of Congress to pass a law that gives vehicle owners the ability to choose who has access to their vehicle data, 85% of those respondents said yes, they would. And so furthermore, regarding vehicle data, the House Science, Space, and Technology Committee recently introduced Surface Transportation Research and Development Act of 2021. And within that was Section 206, Vehicular Data Analytics Pilot Program. And so this provision would require the Secretary of the Department of Transportation to establish a pilot program for the purposes of integrating vehicular onboard sensor data with existing data sets to improve safety, operations, and congestion relief strategies. This is a significant step forward, certainly regarding vehicle data, as it is promoting vehicle data as imperative to safety, operations, and congestion relief. So this is a major win for telematics. Then moving on to cybersecurity. So President Biden recently announced his budget, and I think part of that was about $9.8 billion this year for cybersecurity alone. So cybersecurity obviously is growing in significance. As in the first 5 months in office, the Biden administration has faced 3 significant cyber attacks: the SolarWinds, the Microsoft Exchange server data breach, and the Colonial Pipeline, the most recent. And that doesn't even include the meat packaging issue that happened, I think, yesterday. And so cybersecurity is really growing, not just within the automotive space, but it is a national priority. But the Department of Transportation is acknowledging cybersecurity as well. So NHTSA in March had requested information about their cybersecurity best practices for the safety of the modern vehicles. Geotab weighed in, and we submitted our comments to be part of that discussion. And then in May, the American Alliance for Vehicle Owner Rights, a coalition Geotab is involved with, in addition with Enterprise, they held in May a cybersecurity briefing for congressional staff, just to inform them of how safe it is to communicate with the vehicle, what vehicle data is really used for, and to really push back against some of those arguments that were being made in the state of Massachusetts, but were also being made at the federal level as well. And then regarding privacy, so privacy, there currently is not a federal legislation out there. And so we're seeing is at least 26 states so far have introduced legislation that models itself a little bit after the California Consumer Privacy Act, which passed in 2018. And so we do want to see consumers have more control of their personal data. Certainly would want to see a federal legislation to make it easier to work with the EU, China, as well as just all other countries, if we have that federal piece of legislation. But until then, we're going to continue to see states offer their own solutions, and that patchwork is going to be very cumbersome for any business moving forward if that's the way without a federal legislation. So trade and compliance. So President Biden, when taking office, had a new order as well called the Buy American. And that would increase federal procurement of U.S. goods and services by $400 billion over 4 years. But it would also add a highly disruptive mandate that would raise the threshold for foreign components going into finished goods. And so, this is something we're monitoring as well as most other companies with an international presence as well, just to make sure that we continue to comply with the requirements to service the federal government. Additionally, now more than ever, industry actors such as global and multinational telematics companies, certainly like Geotab, and their global resellers and partners, they need to design and deploy a tailored risk-based sanctions control program to promote compliance and hedge against the possibility of a disruptive, costly violation of U.S. sanctions control. So the question posed here is, do you have access to telematics data that keeps track of your customers and where they are from? Well, if so, the U.S. federal government does want you to develop a risk-based sanctions control program that leverages that data. And so the U.S. Department of Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, it enforces U.S. economic and trade sanctions programs against targeted foreign governments, individuals, groups, and entities in accordance with national security and foreign policy goals and objectives. And so the Office of Foreign Assets Control recently issued a substantial fine to a California-based technology company to settle allegations that that company failed to use IP addresses to identify the locations of its customers. This is significant in that this is the first time the U.S. has used its sanctions enforcement authority to require a private company to leverage information in its possession concerning its customers and where they are from. The company in question had operations in those targeted foreign countries, and so that was the initial issue. But back to the sanctions control program. So what you're seeing on your screen is the relevant framework for the Office of Foreign Assets Control compliance commitments, which identifies 5 elements to fully be compliant with the sanctions control program. As you can see, management commitment, risk assessment, internal controls, testing and auditing, and lastly, training. Those are the 5 elements. And so for more information about that, please refer to James Lay. He's Geotab's compliance officer for trade and U.S. services. But additionally, he is also coming out with a blog series about this. And so I have those linked in resources as well. And I believe he's due in. He just published one about management commitment. So for more information, please reach out to me or Mr. Lay. And as mentioned, additional resources. So if you do have any questions about some of those trucking regulations we talked about, the ELD at geotab.com would be certainly helpful for you. For compliance, legal at Geotab. For anything you saw here today, please feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm also available at government affairs at geotab.com. Just to call out some of the thought leadership in the space, again, with the ELD self-certification, that's just one of the dozens of articles that we have about thought leadership in the ELD space. We also have the Vehicle Data Access Index tool. So our ability to know which data is available from which OEMs. And so highly encourage you to click that link. And then the 5-step sanctions control program, as mentioned, these are authored by James Lay, the Geotab blogs. And so he does have the 5-step program, as well as the first one of the frameworks with management commitment. And stay tuned for the following 4. Industry groups, as mentioned, the American Trucking Association's Technical Maintenance Council RP 1226 messaging standardization. This link should take you just some more information. I did forget to mention Geneva Alliance. So the Geneva Alliance is a very important initiative that Geotab has undertaken. And so their initiative, called the Common Vehicle Interface Initiative, is something Geotab has been taking part of, being led by our product safety team. And so for more information, you can click that link. And then coalitions we're part of to promote vehicle data access. The American Alliance for Vehicle Owners' Rights, which held the cybersecurity briefing. The Consumers Access to Repairs Coalition, the CAR Coalition, which we're actively advancing legislation with. And then for awareness, the Global Alliance for Vehicle Data Access. So if you click those links, you can go to their websites and learn more about the progress being made on vehicle data access at the federal level. Some additional Geotab resources, the community, marketplace, ignition, data, geotab.com itself, as well as sales. And then actionable next steps. So to learn more about what access to a vehicle's data does the vehicle owner have, please feel free to reach out to me. I can certainly provide a load of information there, as well as to learn about other government programs and funding opportunities, as well as for tips to communicating your data needs to OEMs. To connect further, please reach out to me to inform your team about the vehicle data access issue, or I can provide you the information for you to do so. Or if you're interested in connecting to provide a briefing on the policy issues that we've covered so far. And most importantly, it's important to tell your story, getting your story out there, whether to me or to your congressional representative or to your OEM. Or it was always important. Those real experiences that you're facing every day are very important stories to tell, and people are eager to hear them. And lastly, if you do have any questions about anything, please don't hesitate. Reach out to me, Stephen Woodring at geotab.com. And with that, thank you so much, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Wow, Stephen, thank you for such great information. There's clearly a lot going on that we need to stay abreast of. And actually, we did have a question come in. How do we contact our congressional representative to help influence the issue around vehicle data ownership?
Yeah, certainly. Well, one place you can start, to send a letter directly to that congressional representative with information about vehicle data is yourcar.yourdata.org. If you go there on the right-hand side, you'll see demand your data, tell your Congress representative your car data should belong to you and not the car manufacturer. And so that's just a petition that will be sent directly with your name to it. And all you would have to do is put in your zip code. Certainly Googling your zip code and your congressional folks, and just reaching out to them directly, their staff. They do have transportation and infrastructure staff who would be happy to have this conversation with you and learn about your experiences and your business. That's certainly some of the ways. And then please reach out to me if you want to get involved in any of the coalitions that we mentioned today.
So that's a wrap for today's Wildcard Wednesday. And until next time, I'm Sue Miller, and on behalf of myself and everyone here at Geotab, thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you all next time. Same Geotab time, same Geotab channel.